You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Sunday, 3 p.m., May 14th, 2023. And we're here today to continue playing Dear Holmes, which is the play-by-mail serialized letter-based game. We had originally expected that on the 5th week, we would get the solution to the case we've been working on, the Chalfont Outrages. But as I understand it, no one has. It hasn't gone out yet. This is our first month of the whole of 12 playing this game, so we're still getting our bearings. And it's been a little bit of a shock to us how it's proceeded. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But I hope that next week we will go over the solution. So if you are here for the solution and to talk about it, we're not going to be doing that this week. You should feel free to dip out now. You might want to consider giving this video a like, though, and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of these. Will it make a difference? Probably not. I don't see a world in which the likes make a difference between me filming these or not, but it is more enjoyable for me to see when people like certain videos, etc. So if you are liking these videos, I would encourage you to like and subscribe. And it does make a difference when I say that, because if I don't say it, no one gives it a like. But if I do say it, people tend to do it. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We're just going to sit here for as long as people want to sit here and talk theories. We can talk a little bit about the system in general, but we can work on theories because the one unexpected part of this experience with Dear Holmes is how many interesting theories have been discussed on the YouTube channel, in the videos, comments, also on a thread for this game that I made on the Board Game Geek Guild section for this channel, which you can find a link to in the About page. Both places are reasonable places to talk about theories. And I think what we'll do is we'll maybe scroll through some of the theories that people have posted. Anyone in the chat, I'd be happy to spend as much time talking about your theories as possible. Maybe we'll go through them. If someone has a good theory, we'll try to debunk it. We could spend a little bit of time talking about how our expectations for this whole system, Dear Holmes, have played out differently than I expected. And we could talk a little bit about sort of what makes a mystery fair and what kind of solution we're going to be happy with. We have some differences in opinion there. And then maybe we can go through the letters again and skim them and look for more clues. Other bookkeeping. The last 2 days, Friday and Saturday night, we've been playing a game called Be the Detective, which I have off to the side. It's taking longer than expected. It's been a very cool experience. Maybe 2 6-hour streams, 2 5-hour streams, and I expect we'll finish it tonight. But some mixed thoughts about the questions and answers at the end of each episode. I suspect, though, that I'll be ordering the other game that they make. Other bookkeeping. So Jonathan has been running a Fair Play book reading club, virtual book reading club that's just started. He's posted a link in the chat to his Discord if people want to read a story, talk about it. I have the first book that's going to be discussed in June, but they've been discussing a free public domain story for a little bit. Let's just catch up here. Jen says, are they still writing the solution? I wonder. Jonathan said, Jen says, I'm not surprised there's no solution. I'm unable to find one that I'm happy with. None of us have really found one that we love. And Tina says, I hope the solution is good. It's going to leave a bad taste if not. And Tina said, did Jesse or anyone else send in a written answer? No, I certainly did not. I have no confidence in our theories. M.E. says, are you expecting a wrap-up mail from the blinded birder case like you got in the other cases? I was thinking you might have something by now if it was coming. I was thinking the same thing. It looks to me like we are not going to get a follow-up wrap-up from the blinded birder case, which is unfortunate, and it makes me... we sort of ended our last session. We took our time playing through it, but our last session we sort of ended quickly because we thought there was going to be a little epilogue, but there never was. One has not arrived. So I'm not sure if that means we should have a little wrap-up session to talk about it. Probably I'll do a spoiler-free review of it soon. I did get an email from Jason, one of the developers at Murders by Mail, and he said that that they're doing it in their spare time. I asked about a possible new case, and he said it's they're very unsure about it. It's very up in the air because they're doing this just in their spare time. They have real jobs. So it sounds like if there is going to be another Murders by Mail, it's going to be a long time in the future. Although if someone here in the channel wants to make another case set in this same world, you see how it works. You've got the map. You could try writing another case for it. They've got the infrastructure. They've got the back end. They're still running their system. If someone wanted to create a new game, that might be a pitch you could make to them. You write the story and the entries, and they put it in their system. Matt says, Jesse, do you ever sleep? I don't know how you keep this pace up. When my sleep schedule is good and stabilizes, which it has been lately, then it's enjoyable. I am really looking forward to tonight's continuation of Be the Detective. All right, so what shall we do? How shall we do this? Shall we go through some of the theories from the channel? Does anyone have a good theory that they like? I don't think any of us have a good theory. Maybe while you guys are writing some thoughts, if you have any theory you want to present or ideas, I've got some comments. I see Emily has joined us in the chat. Emily wrote a long post with some interesting ideas. And again, we can sort of go through the letters again. We can take our time. As much time as you want to spend talking about these is fine with me. If you want to leave early, that's fine too. Let me just remind you what's been sort of shocking here, though. As I understood, the idea of Dear Holmes was that every month there's a new case consisting of 4 letters. There's a contest where every month someone can try, the person who solved the case the best, with the most flair and the earliest in the month, gets awarded as the winner. And I understood the system to be that by the first letter, you'd have to have luck and great intuition to guess it right. But by the time you got to the 4th letter, it should be very clear what happened. And one of the real surprises for us is we've gotten to the 4th letter. We've got a fairly seasoned group of grizzled detectives here. By the time we got to the 4th letter, we kind of feel like there is not enough information here to rule out the improbable and get the solution. So we're at a loss as to what's going on. And we've talked about whether the idea is that when we get the solution, are we going to be thrilled that it's been a fair mystery and the solution was hiding under our noses and we should have found it? Or are we going to feel like this is ridiculous, this is implausible? Okay, Rob says we could go through the suspects and list their pros and cons. Okay, why don't we do that then? We might as well start with the first suggestion. You know what? I want to read the newest post first. Let's see. Alex says in the chat, I have questions about the timing of 24 June. Alphonse returned to the estate by 11 on the morning of the 24th, roughly an hour before I visited the police station. Letter 3, page 2. Bradley was at the police station approximately 12 p.m. Yes, I believe that is what we concluded. That he's going to the... He goes early in the morning. Okay, let's start there. Okay, let's look at Alex's question. But yes, he... to answer Alex's question, Peter Bradley goes with Derry in the morning to pay the vet. He says, first thing in the morning, he's gone to town with to pay Mr. Allison with Derry, the vet. At that point, they get called by a poison dog. They go investigate the poison dog. They save the poison dog. Then Dr. Allison and Peter Bradley, our guy, go to the police to report it. That's when they discover the dog that's been hit on the head. And we're told later, he mentions that he was at the police around noon. So that's how we broke down our timeline. He gets there early in the morning. By the time they save the poisoned dog and get called to the cop station and finish up there, it's around noon, we're told. And the poison dog that they meet early in the morning, maybe 8 a.m., 9 a.m., that dog must have been poisoned 2 hours earlier, says the doctor. So that's how we reconstructed that timeline. I think it's at a later mail that we're told that he says it was at noon. Here. Here is where we got that timeline. We're told early in the morning, and now here is where we find out when he was actually at the police. I've questioned the staff, verified that Alphonse returned by 11 on the morning of the 24th, roughly an hour before I visited the police station. So that's how we backtracked and got that the time on the second letter that he actually ended up at the police station was noon. And then from there, we can back up and see that it must have been 11:30 when the injured dog that was hit on the head was brought in. We don't know exactly when he headed to town, but he says first thing in the morning. So it must have taken a couple hours between heading to town, dealing with the poison dog, and making his way to the constable. Let me see if anyone has any comments about that. Alex says, but Bradley awoke Mr. Derry at sunrise. Does it say... It does say sunrise. In the second letter, it says they go first thing in the morning. And you're saying on the third letter, it specifically says sunrise, huh? Let's see. Alex says, letter 3, page 4. I feel like letter 3 with the biographies might have been the letter that we spent the least amount of time on. Let's check this. Alex says, letter 3, page 4. The sunrise was at 4:44. Oh, okay, so Alex is looking up the history, 4:44. And normally he wakes up at 5 a.m. Let's see. Letter 3. Let's see when he definitely says they went into time early in the morning. Does he really say at sunrise? That would throw things off a bit. Not throw things off, but seem to give him a long time in town before he went to the police. I'm trying to find the part about sunrise. He says Derry. Okay, you're right. It does say, I can attest to the fact that he was in bed the morning of the 24th. I woke him to go to town at sunrise. So the question that Alex is bringing up is that our timeline then says on the morning of the 24th, when they discover the dog's in town, that Alex is pointing out it's a very long time to be doing nothing. He wakes him up at sunrise at 5 or 6 a.m. They get prepared. They head into town. It can't take them more than a half an hour to get into town. So if they get into town even like at 7 a.m., then they go to pay the vet. They get called to the poisoned dog, and then they go eventually to the police station. That's a big chunk of hours for them to be loitering about dealing with the poisoned dog. So that is a little strange, but maybe we should think, he's just summarizing. You could imagine maybe his noon time at the cops is not when he arrived at the police, but when he left. And maybe we should imagine they're talking quite a bit. But I suppose you could also say, it is worth saying, I guess maybe the most important thing to say here, unless you suspect that the writer, Peter Bradley, is lying to us, which we've discussed the possibility of. But putting that aside for a second, maybe the smartest thing to leave open is if you believe that they got into town at 7 a.m., they dealt with the poisoned dog. And if you believe that they dealt with the poisoned dog until noon, and we're told that when we arrive at the police station, that the dog that had been beaten at the head got brought in a half an hour ago, then you might need to leave open the possibility that the dog was attacked while we were in town rather than before we arrived. Now, if that's true, we're told that Alphonse gets home. When's our timeline for Alphonse again? When do we know that he's home? Because we had a long debate about whether Alphonse had time to hit the dog on the head with the hammer on his way home. He returned to his estate by 11 in the morning, an hour before I visited the police station. So I argue that gave Alphonse a not an alibi, but rather an implicated timeline, that he could have hit the dog on his way home if he got home by 10. I still think that's possible. But should we make sure that our assistant is with us during that time? So if we think that the dog was attacked at 11:30 or so, at what point do we separate from Derry? Let's just make sure, because we do separate from Derry when we're in town. Derry spots the dog. And then, let's see. We spot the poisoned dog. The doctor says it must have been 2 hours ago that he was poisoned. We don't have a timeline here. We know they come into town early, but this could be as early anywhere from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. given that we came here early in the morning. I don't know if that's a mistake by the author or it's just something weird. Okay, so we say we're going to go to the police. We ask her who it is. Okay. She tells us she went to the vet when she found the poisoned dog. Okay, I dispatched Derry to Mr. Allison's office with Tugger to ensure the dog was recovering. Mr. Allison and I headed for the police station round the corner. Walking into the police station. Okay, so it's clear that Derry does not have time to injure the dog, right? Because we send the only time Derry's alone here, unless he did it last night, but he doesn't have time while we're at town to walk off and kill the dog because he's with us this whole time until we leave to go around the corner. All right, so Derry is definitely not dipping away while we're in town together. Okay. Town is only a mile, 15 minutes by foot. I'm sure the bludgeon dog was attacked while they were dealing with the poison dog. The attack was recent. Derry's with Bradley until they head to the police after the poison dog. Well, I am definitely not ready to sign off on the idea. We've discussed this. I am not ready to sign off on the idea that the dog was attacked while they were the dog hit on the head was attacked while they were dealing with the poison dog. I agree that that's the better reading of what happened. They're told that people got called around in a tight circle. He was struggling. He was barking. It got attention of people. They then someone saw the dog, got the constable. Constable came back, found the dog. There was blood on the ground. He was in a daze. He appeared somewhat aggressive. That's what they're talking about here. And then he says how he caught it with a tarpaulin, I guess a tarp. I don't know. Someone could look up tarp. Could someone look up tarpaulin? Let's make sure we're not overlooking an important clue because we're assuming the definition of the word. I assume he just put a tarp over it and caught it, but let's make sure. Anyway, the constable put the tarp over him, caught the dog, brings him back, and says, and we think that's about 11:30. So we're at the police station at 12, and we're told later that the constable brought back the dog a half hour ago. That would bring the dog back at around 11:30. But we don't know how long it's taken between when the dog started barking to when the dog got brought back. But more importantly, I really feel like we should leave open the possibility that the dog was hit on the head the previous night and woke up. The vet says that he evidently didn't get knocked unconscious, but I don't think we can assume that. The vet is not omniscient. And if you're looking for things that seem contradicted, another one is that the Wallace, the guy who owns the forge, says he's alone, but then we meet him, he says he's got a wife. All right, let's look in the chat, more thoughts. One of my theories is that Derry knew his killer, which might be why he was killed. He recognized who was attacking the dog. Tarpaulin is a heavy-duty waterproof cloth, originally of tarred canvas, so it is a tarp. Okay, good. John Kingsbury says, when ready, we could confirm what hair was at the scene of Derry's... Could we confirm that what hair? Checking evidence might help. Okay, so we had some disagreement there. Sure, let's look at that. On the fourth letter, Derry, we come to town, we find that Derry has been killed. And then there's some confusion in the chat about the scene of the crime and the dog hair. So let's see it. So Derry was found in town that morning, stab wound to the stomach. He was in the same alley where Miss Violet found the poison dog, which is right outside the bar where they like to go drinking after hours. A quantity of dog hair was found scattered about the crime scene. As you've reported the previous with the dog, you might know something of value, Mr. Bradley. That's us. This was the man that was found. He shows us a picture, and we see it's Mr. Derry. Our guy IDs, Derry. The sergeant asked me if I was aware of any relatives. Now, I want to point something out. He hasn't shown him the body. He's shown him a picture. If you suspected something was going on, we've seen plenty of TV shows where the police stage the death in order to catch the killer. So I do want to note that he's shown him a photo. Does he see the body later? Let's keep going. This is one of the fun... this is another idea that one of the enjoyable parts of having a mystery that doesn't have that you can't find a good solution to is how much it has propelled everyone here to come up with theories and really try to think outside the box. And for my money, that's almost better than having a solvable mystery. So I'm almost like in the camp of let the AI create an impossible mystery at random that has no solution just to see what people can come up with. Okay, so he shows us a photo, we should remember, not the body. Let's just keep that in mind. Okay, does he have any relatives? He reminds us that he's only been here shortly. We don't know much about him. But he did like to hang out at the bar. Okay, he says, come to the station, perform the formal identification of the body. Okay, so he does actually see the body eventually here, I guess. He was shocked when he saw the body. Okay, so the guy really is dead. So he actually does see the body, and he says Derry's wound would have caused any man a swift death. So it's a pretty violent wound in the stomach. But there were also bruises on his face and a larger one on his shoulder. This gave us some real pause here. And I think our best guess was that maybe he was hit on the shoulder by someone, possibly the same person who's carrying around a heavy poker that they're using to stab the dogs. This is our best theory. And Jonathan had an amazing observation. I think it was Jonathan, you correct me, who had the amazing observation about the poker comment by the servants. Because of everything in this case, that was my favorite observation and a wonderful little trick to remember if you're telling mystery stories. Who wants, before I recap it, who wants to take credit for it? Jonathan says that was not me. I want to find that because that was such a clever observation and such a good trick to remember if you're writing mysteries. Does anyone remember who wants to take credit for it? I'm going to recap that. Does anyone not know what I'm talking about? Has not remembered what I'm talking about? What am I talking about? I know Jonathan knows what I'm talking about. It was Nicola. All right, so here's what Nicola said, and this was so good. I want to mention it. Does anyone remember what letter it was in? Definitely wasn't in the first, maybe the fourth. I want to find it. Yeah, here we go. All right. Nicholas says it was not me. Song of the Wood says remind me. Okay, so let me show you because this was my favorite observation of all the games we're playing. I mean, it could be wrong, but I think it's right. Okay, so here it is on the actual, the fourth letter, the final letter. This is what we were reading. We'll come back to it. They're talking about the dog hair. Okay, anything else? Asked the sergeant. We start to recap. He says, we're trying to recap our morning. Bradley says, after I gave the dogs their morning food and water, I went to the hall hoping for an early breakfast. I found that the kitchen was already in full swing, despite the fact that John, the apprentice, was handling everything. He's come a long way. The butler, Mr. Summers, that is, and one of the kitchen maids, Miss Ruby, were in an animated conversation, although they stopped as soon as they saw me. I think Summers was talking about a loss in poker. John eagerly explained to me while I ate that Lefebvre had been with his wife. Okay. So Bradley walks in on the servants talking. They hush up when he comes in. And he says, I think Summers was talking about a loss in poker. So you read that and you think they're talking about a gambling loss about playing poker. And Dawn is taking credit. Dawn said, hey, is it possible that our guy misheard them? He heard the word poker, assumed the narrator, our unreliable narrator, assumes they're talking the way someone would assume. He heard the word poker, that they're probably talking about a loss in a game of poker. But what they're really talking about is a missing fireplace poker, which is something that we hypothesized earlier on might have been what hurt the dog on the head. Because when the dogs are hit on the head in letter 2, the vet hypothesizes about what it was that could have hit the dog, and he says, it's hard to say what it could have been used, a heavy poker, a hammer. So our theory early on after letter 2 was that the murder weapon might be like an old Victorian cane with a knife at the end, something heavy that you could hit the dog with, but also stab. And also that was my idea, that maybe he stabbed the first dog through the fence. And now if you put that together with the missing poker, what I think you could imagine is that someone has fashioned a weapon out of a fireplace poker, which normally has quite a sharp edge on it, but they could have even sharpened it. That would be the ideal weapon for all of our crimes. It could cause a very bad knife wound. We're told that the wound that killed the first dog was short, so it wouldn't be that crazy that you're talking about the pointed end of a very heavy-duty iron fireplace poker. Rob says, I have another theory about the poker comment in regards to Jackie Dow's. Maybe we can discuss it later. Yes, let's do that. Okay, also I think the fact that the terrier was in the chef's room could be relevant. That's definitely a possibility. Jan says, could he sharpen on the bear cage? Jan is getting back to the bear cage shavings, which is one of the things that has been a consternation for us. Let's go back and continue with our reading of the dog hairs in the 4th letter. Let's wrap up that. Okay, so he was drinking in the after hours of the pub. Let's see. Okay, so sorry. He's found with bruises on his face and a heavy wound on his shoulder. So I'm thinking someone may have come up behind him, I guess, or hit him with that fireplace on the shoulder, and then gotten into a fight, hit him in other places, and eventually stabbed him. So one of the theories was that Derry is the dog abuser and someone caught him and killed him. The other possibility is that seems more likely, is that Derry stumbled on the killer at the drinking establishment, and stumbled on the killer abusing a dog in the alley, and that person killed Derry. So that leads me to believe it's Alphonse, but you could also imagine that that Derry is the dog abuser and then someone else killed him when they caught him. But then on what basis would that person not go to the police and say, hey, I caught the dog killer, he fought with me and ended up dead? It's a weird situation where Derry is the dog abuser with a weapon to hurt dogs, and then he somehow gets killed by someone with a knife. There's no poker found on the scene. That doesn't make sense for me. I think the only logical conclusion is that the person who killed Derry was the person with this large weapon who left with it and killed Derry with it. So I think Derry must have stumbled onto it. I don't believe the ideas of Derry being the dog person and someone killing him, but let's see. Murder took place in the early hours of the morning. We think your assistant, Derry, have been drinking after hours. And then we're told about the peasant is open late at night, beyond when they're supposed to be, with people drinking. And the cops think he got into a brawl. And then he says, okay, so here we go. Let's read this part that caused some confusion. We think he found himself in a brawl. As you can see, he held up a handful of coarse gray hair. He holds it there. There was plenty of dog hair too. So when some people read this and they thought, hey, they're talking about like Derry's hair or something. But no, I think he's saying, as you can see, there was plenty of dog hair too. And he's holding up the dog hair to show it. And he says, even now, the wind hasn't swept it all away. But there was no dog around when we arrived, but several barmaids have confirmed a frighteningly large stray dog roaming the alley as of late. Constable Keaty also saw a large patchy-haired dog running about on his patrol earlier. Then the vet says, I'd say it's an Irish wolfhound. Good news in any case is that I find that when I can't catch my patient, as here, means that nothing too much is wrong with him. So he's saying, I'd say it's an Irish wolfhound based on the description and the patchy hair, which we don't know, is that a clue or is that just a stray dog? And he's saying, well, if he's not here, he's probably fine. He probably ran off. Now, should we consider this guy as another suspect too? Is this constable who claims to see this dog? Is that the same constable that's found the other dog and put the terrapin on it? I'm just wondering, is it always the same constable who's dealing with all these dogs? No, Constable Roberts is the one that gets called to the station about the dog hit on the head. So different constables. All right, let's see more chat in here. Okay, defective terriers in the chef's room could be relevant. We don't know that. Perky might be in danger. So there were lots of theories early on that the killing of the dogs was staged to prepare for a human attack as a distraction. But then the fact that 2 dogs were killed in town, 1 poisoned, it really didn't seem right. Rob reminds us that the metal shavings are found a full week before the first dog attack. Emily says, I still think the dog stuff might be a smokescreen. It's attention grabbing with no apparent motive. Yeah, we chewed on this for a while, but it seemed so elaborate to injure 3 dogs in 3 different ways. Why on earth would you do that? Emily says, could Derry have showed up to blackmail, or he recognized someone and he was the intended target all along, with the dog stuff just being misdirection? The amount of dog hair seems almost intentional. I do agree that the dog hair seems suspicious, but the idea of killing Derry late at night or early in the morning outside in the alley, to me seems very unlikely to be a planned attack. It's a very inconvenient time to kill someone. Derry sometimes comes home at midnight. Now he's coming home in the early morning. It would be very hard to predict when you were going to catch Derry leaving there. It seems like it would be a very inconvenient place to kill him. Like even if your plan was to kill Derry as a premeditated thing, you would ambush him on the way home, not in an alley near the bar in town. That just seems like that's much, much more likely to be a case of Derry stumbling onto someone unplanned and getting killed. I really find it hard to imagine Derry as a blackmailer. I find it hard to imagine the killing of Derry to be premeditated. It's a weird place to meet someone for a meeting too. You're sort of having a meeting in an alley right outside a bar. That just seems weird to me. Did the attack on the dogs change the routine of Derry? He changed his sleeping. The author changed Peter Bradley changed sleeping, but it doesn't seem to have messed with Derry much. Derry was a very prime suspect for me when he was found awake way before his shift, just hanging out in the kitchen having a meal when the dogs were barking and woke up Peter Bradley. That's our first attack on Bundo. But him being killed does not seem right. Then there was a question about Jackie Dow's, the butcher's boy. Jonathan says, it sounds to me like someone was shaving the wolfhound. Was that going to be the bizarre crime in and of itself? Could they have been cleaning in an area to perform some kind of operation on the dog? Oh, the dog hair. You think the dog hair... Nicholas says, my theory is that Derry was awake because he had just returned from the inn on the first night. I see. The question was, though, not so much... it was a question of why he was awake at 5 a.m. on the first attack of Bundo. He could have been coming home, but then it's still suspicious that he didn't go out to check on the barking dog unless he was the person who injured the dog. Unless they're too far away. I'll give you my theory of the patchy dog and its hair and why that's in the story. My thinking is it was trying to explain to us why there was this deal at the alley. I think the hair I think we're told that lots of people in the last couple of days has seen some patchy-haired dog. And I think what we're led to believe by the scene of Derry's crime in that alley with the dog hair still there is it's the clue for us that Derry stumbled upon someone abusing the dog. That the dog was in that alley with the dog's attacker and Derry stumbled on him. But then there's some discussion about the animal attack. That was our initial strong theory, that the knife wound on Bundo wasn't a knife. It was a cassowary claw that got the first dog. But a cassowary is not poisoning dogs or hitting them on the head with a hammer, and a cassowary is not running around town. So that seems very unlikely. One of the theories was, well, I raised an early possibility. I mean, we've all gone through so many theories, but one of the theories I raised was, cui bono, who benefits from all this? And I suggested, well, there is one person who benefits from all this quite well, and that's the vet. And I made my case that the vet, if he could get hired by Lord Chalfont to take care of his menagerie of animals, that would make him a pretty penny. And Allison talks about how he's going to get paid by the forger when he saves his dog because there's a tag on it. And I also pointed out how suspicious it was that the vet gets called to this dog running in circles, and he's like, oh, he's poisoned with strychnine. Here's the thing to make him throw up, and now he's fine. I was like, that seems suspicious, like almost like a Munchausen by proxy. Like, why does he know how to save the dog so quickly? and he successfully saves him, and he lives in town. So I felt like a lot of things lined up against the vet, and he would have opportunity. There's two problems I pointed out, though, with that theory. The first is, we're actually told quite early on that it would be hard to get in the estate from outside the estate, and the vet has no business on the estate. We're told that it's a giant estate, but it's walled off with sentry guards on the corners at all hours. So that would seem to make it very hard for the vet to get in and kill Bundo. The second slight problem with the theory of the vet is that when we talk to the old woman and bring her back her dog, she tells us how kind the vet is to her and never charges her. So the question would be, why would he attack her dog knowing he's not going to get paid by her, and he's doing all this paid work, vet work, without pay, and he seems to care about the dog. So that, and on balance, pushed me away from the vet. But Jan says, yeah, that's a nice, it helps explain why none of the dogs were killed. Yeah, that was my other point. When he examines the first dog, Bundo, he says, wow, it's a miracle the knife wound missed all the organs. And then he saves every dog. Every dog survives. So that made me very suspicious of the vet. But I have a hard time seeing how he got into the estate. And I have a hard time seeing why he would attack Tugger if he's not going to get paid for Tugger. So that's that one. I know there was a question about Jackie Dowd's alibi. Let's take a closer look at that. As I understand it, we believe that Jackie Dowd was expected to could easily have been expected to make a delivery on the date of the first murder of Bundo. So he could have been in the estate. He would have been led into the estate with a delivery. Remember, when we wake up at 5 a.m., the chef tells us he's waiting for a delivery, a late delivery from town. So Jackie Dowd did have access to the estate. He was supposed to meet his girlfriend at the location where the poison dog is found. Now, let's read about the catching of Jackie Dowd. And our reading was originally that he couldn't have killed Derry. So let's look at this. I also mentioned there was news concerning Jackie Dowd. I should not consider it to be good news, but it's fortunate information that it suggests the boy is uninvolved. Why is Peter Bradley concluding that? Because the butcher's delivery boy, Dowd, was caught stealing from Witherden's. That's the confectionery near where the dog was hit with the hammer. But, he says, rather he's witnessed and subsequently chased to no avail. The constable recounting this mentioned that he was last seen heading west out of town 2 days ago. The reason for their discussions appear to be that Dowd was arrested last night in another town, attempting to steal. So the clear implication is that Dowd has left town, arrested last night. I suppose it doesn't even matter, in another town. So if he was arrested last night, he couldn't be Derry's killer. So he's not Derry's killer. So unless you're postulating that Dowd killed the dogs, and someone else killed Derry. So Dow's killed the dogs, not Derry, but then someone else killed Derry. Now we've got 3 people that would be involved, if that's your theory that Dow's is involved. So to me, this really clears Dow's. All right, let's look in the chat here. I think we need to look more. A vet drumming up business would be a pretty lackluster solution. All right, well, we're not worried about lackluster solutions at this point. We're just worried about any solutions. Emmy says, I think we need to look more at Derry being the person killed. Was it really just because he heard something in the alley as he left? Or was he actually targeted? I'm not sure how we're going to come up with that solution. But I think I could actually... Emmy says it feels unsatisfactory for Derry. Well, let me make a counter argument to that, the claims about Derry, and then talk about my theory here. Okay, so the thing that you guys seem to be hung up on is you're not happy with the idea that Derry stumbled onto someone and was killed. But let me make the case that the evidence supports that quite well. A major reason are the injuries on Derry. He's got a wound on his shoulder, a big bruise on his shoulder, bruises about his face, and then killed with a knife wound. Now, that doesn't exactly sound like someone who's killed with premeditated murder, does it? I mean, it sounds like he's gotten into a real struggle with someone. This is not someone who snuck up on him and stabbed him 3 times in the stomach and cut his throat, stabbed him in the heart and the liver. This is someone he got in a real struggle with. No? That suggests to me not premeditated. I mean, yeah, you could have a premeditated attack and then struggle with them, but I mean, it seems to me more likely that he got into a fight with someone. And then my second argument about that was the location. He's going out drinking to all hours. People do know that he hangs out at the pub. So if you wanted to catch him, that would be a good place to catch him. But it would also be a good place to be observed. And in the alley, why would he go down that alley? I don't believe you need to go down that alley to the pub. It's just an alley near the pub. So I guess you guys had a theory that he was meeting someone for blackmail. That just seems like we're reading too much into it. Too much evidence that we don't have available to us. John says, it does seem interesting that Dow's is the one person exclusively tied to stealing. Could he have been practicing tampering with locks on the bear locks? Is he a vet? He's definitely a vet. Derry's a vet with PTSD, and Alphonse is a vet with mysterious awards. Rob says, a reminder of the bear lock is we don't know if it was even messed with. The metal shavings were found near the cage and might not be related to the cage lock at all. Well, you could go even further than that. Not only do we not know for sure that it was messed with, but metal shavings found near the cage, the zookeeper claims that. We've never seen the metal shavings. So it might not have even been metal shavings at all. Is it possible that... That's a good point by Rob, though. Okay, even if you assume that there really were metal shavings, is it possible that we were seeing someone sharpening the poker? Putting a nice edge on the poker? That's an interesting idea. Amy says it suggests the dog attacks had their own motivation, pointing more towards the psycho who doesn't like dogs. I mean, I do think that is the Occam's razor cleanest solution here. So my theory is the psycho dog hater theory, which I agree feels like not the most Sherlock Holmesian case. But as I see it, the cleanest solution here is that Alphonse, the son, who's desperately scared of dogs. Who made the post that I liked, putting a twist on Alphonse? I really like that. I'm trying to remember who said that. Who was it that posted a reply to my theory about Alphonse, about Alphonse's motive? Let me try to recap it and someone can take credit for it. My theory was that it's Alphonse, that Alphonse hates dogs, that he came home late one night drunk, got scared by Bundo, and stabbed him with his poker through the cage. So he didn't have to enter the cage. He's too scared of dogs, but he stabbed Bundo with his poker that he carries as a weapon, which he's stolen from the kitchen, maybe sharpened up. And that he gets drunk, gets angry, and poisons a dog in town while he's in town. And then when he's leaving on the 24th, he's home by 10:30 or so, and that he hit the dog on the head, the stray dog, on the head on his way home. He left poison for one, hit another one on the head on his way home at 10 o'clock, 10:30. We head out to town. We should have passed him by on the road, but we didn't. That suggests he may have still been in town when we got to town. So we get to town, we're dealing with the poison dog that Alphonse has been out late night drinking. Alphonse is still in town when we're dealing with the poison dog. And while we're in town dealing with the poison dog, he's come home early in the morning after drinking, encounters a dog on the road as he's buying his sweets from Worthingders, hits the dog on the head on his way home with his sweets. He's seen at home in the kitchen at 10:40 a.m., having returned home, eating his sweets, and then he goes to bed. We know he loves the Pheasant Inn, so I'm suggesting that on this last night of the 29th, he's drinking in the Pheasant Inn along with Derry. He leaves first. He's attacking the stray dog in the alley. Derry comes out, sees him, tries to stop him. He gets attacked by Alphonse, who kills Derry and then comes home. So that's my theory. That feels fairly clean. The only thing that's unpleasant about it is that it's all due to the psycho killer Alphonse, but I think, if you're trying to think of who's a Victorian brutal killer who thinks he can get away with anything, the Lord's son is not a bad one. So someone made a point that I really liked, and Song of the Lute is coming close to it. Song of the Lute saying, Chalfont says the boy is too scared to get near dogs, but that doesn't mean a scared person wouldn't attack one. And someone made a comment that I was sort of riffing off of that I really thought was good. Our explanation for Alphonse is that we were originally saying that the constables rule him out because they say this boy's too scared. He would not go into this dog cage. He's terrified. But the point that someone made, and that Song of the Lute is sort of making, that I'm making here, is could you turn that on its head? Think about it. Here's Alphonse walking to town. We think walking. Yeah, walking to town because Derry has seen him walking to town. Walking to town, walking back, and he's desperately afraid of dogs. they used that as his alibi why he couldn't have gone into the cage to attack the dog. But couldn't you turn it on its head and say, Chalfont is desperately panicked of dogs, and there are stray dogs running all over this town, that the owners are not doing their job keeping tied down. So Chalfont has fashioned himself a weapon to protect himself from these stray dogs roaming all over town, menaces. And Chalfont carries this weapon with him when he goes to town late and comes back, and he gets drunk. And when he sees these stray dogs, he's terrified of them and angry that they're being left to run around town. He gets drunk, filled with anger and courage, and is attacking these dogs. And he's also putting poison out for them because he thinks these dogs should not be left roaming around. And he's an entitled lord. He's just angry at these peasants letting their dogs roam around where they could attack people. So I love the idea that his fear of dogs, rather than being an alibi, it does mean he probably wouldn't have gone into Bundo's cage, but we think he's probably stabbed Bundo through the fence. But his fear of dogs could be propelling him to carry around this weapon and lash out in anger when he's drunk at the stray dogs. They're stray dogs that are killed in town. It's only Bundo that he gets his first kill. Like maybe he's like hates the dogs, but he's not sure what will happen if he attacks one. So he does his first attack on Bundo, who's locked up in a cage and can't hurt him. That's where he gets his first taste of blood. Like he stabs Bundo and he's like, whoa, this works. The dog freaked out, got scared, ran away. I almost killed it. This is a great weapon. Let me try now, go using it in town. All right. Meanwhile, the chat has moved on to more exotic theories. Rob is saying, could it have been the poker was stolen days earlier? I really think yes. I think that's completely reasonable that the poker could have been stolen earlier and just discovered. Emmy says, I do like the idea that the zookeeper was trying to capture the wolfhound and the shavings were a lie to cover why he needed a new lock. Shavings being a lie is a solid explanation. Then we have to assume the zookeeper is the culprit and build a motive for him. It's not just a motive, but it's an alibi. It's like he's not seen leaving town. There's no sign of him leaving. Emmy says, the Chalfont theory is a nice one. It doesn't explain Bundo. I think you could explain Bundo by saying that he was either experimenting for his first attack, or he got startled by Bundo, who was barking at him through the fence on his way when he was coming home drunk. Jonathan Warner says, a side thought crossed my mind. Maybe the reason the solution has not been published yet is they're still trying to pick a contest winner. Maybe all the proposed solutions are wrong. That's a reasonable theory. Emmy said, why does Chalfont poison a dog? Because Chalfont hates the stray dogs and is terrified of running into them on the street. Chalfont is constantly going to town, to the pub, and coming back alone, and he's terrified of these stray dogs roaming all over town. So he's putting out poison to kill the dogs that are roaming around town. Jan says, time for me to stay tonight. Say goodnight. Rob says, I do not like Chalfont as the culprit. He seems to be up to something else, meeting a woman or political meetings at night. Really? He's not up to something. He's just a spoiled, rich son of the Lord. He says his mind. He does whatever he wants. He goes drinking at all hours. When we ask him for his alibi, he says, I don't have to tell you my alibi. He's the one person who doesn't even give us alibis. He's completely entitled. He feels like he has the right to do whatever he wants. If dogs are attacking him in the street, he has the right to kill them. He's above worrying about killing dogs. It's only Rob says he's out at night way after the inn closes. That's not true. We're told by the cops in our fourth letter that the inn stays open way into the morning against rules. And you could imagine that the Lord's son says, I'll give you money, you stay open. Like they've got good incentive to stay open for him. They've got their special hours way into the morning. So from my standpoint, Alphonse is the one that's got all of the Alphonse doesn't have an alibi unless you think that 10 a.m., 10:30 arriving home that night is an alibi, but I really don't think about it. If you think about, let's recap Alphonse's alibi that you guys have been pushing. Alphonse is seen in the kitchen at 10:40. I believe that's right. He likes remember, he likes the mince. That's the scene of the second crime with the dog hit on the head. All right, now where is his alibi according to you guys? Yeah, here, okay. So let's look at this. Let's see if we can come up with a better idea about this. We know he was at the Pheasant on the evening of the 23rd. Remember, the dogs are discovered injured. The two dogs are discovered injured in town on the morning of the 24th. Afternoon of the 24th. Okay. So he returned to the estate by 11 on the morning of the 24th. So by 11... Alphonse is back in town, right? So run your timeline. Sorry, 11 a.m., Alphonse eating mince in kitchen, okay? Now, we know it's about 15 minutes to town. So the latest he could have been in town is 10:45 a.m. Latest Alphonse in town. Note he could be buying mince at Witherden's. Okay, so now the question is it possible that the dog was attacked at 10:45 or earlier? That's our question. If you want to alibi Alphonse, you have to claim that the dog was attacked after 10:45. And I do not think there's any way we can claim that, because we're told that the dog that the tarpaulin was put around, we're told a long story about it, right? But let's look. We go to this is when the two dogs were attacked. We go to the cops and we hear about the dog that was hit by the hammer. We're told that that was around noon. We're not really sure that he got there at noon or left at noon. It seems like a very long delay between when they arrived at town. But somewhere around noon, they're at the police station. This guy says, that was quick. I just sent you a note. And then we say, what? The dog was attacked? Constable Roberts came in half hour ago. So that tells us that the dog was brought in, the hammer hit dog was brought in with a tarp at no later than 11:30, possibly as early as 11:20 or so. So let's assume the dog was brought in at 11:20. brought in at 11:20. Now the cop tells us about the story of how he brought this dog in. It was quite involved. Someone heard barking. It attracted many passersby. One of them goes and gets a cop who's on the beat. The cop comes back, sees the dog in the alley, notice it's staggering around aggressive. They see some blood, which suggests it was attacked there. And then he says, okay, I brought it to the station, but I had to put a tarp on it, throw the tarp around him, wrestle him down, and then brought him back. So if he arrived back at the station at 11:20, don't you think that the time the dog was attacked could certainly have been 10:45 or earlier even? All you have to do is say that it's the time between the attack and the dog gets brought into the station is 40 minutes. That seems completely reasonable. This is not an alibi against Alphonse. To claim that Alphonse is an alibi, you have to claim that the dog could have been attacked no earlier than 11 a.m. If you claim that, then you can say that, okay, if the dog had to be attacked by 11, no earlier, then Alphonse couldn't have done it. But that's not right. Surely the dog could have easily been attacked before 11, even if you think that the dog never passed out. And if you believe the dog passed out, then it could have happened the previous night. All right, let's talk in the chat here. Okay, so would the inn really be open until 10 a.m.? That sounds way longer than a couple of hours. Okay, don't forget, Alphonse. I'm having some disagreements here. Okay, so let me just see. Emmy says the chef was sent to buy Alphonse sweets on the day of the two dogs were attacked. He didn't buy them himself. That is not fair to say. First of all, I'm not sure we know. I think you're right that the guy was sent to buy sweets, but that could be, you could do that both ways, because Alphonse is seen eating sweets at 11 when the chef is still in town, right? I believe that's right. So the question, you could turn that around and ask, how did Alphonse have sweets if he didn't buy them at the shop himself? And the second thing you could say, Alphonse arrives home at 11. Would the inn really be open at 10? Sounds way longer. But don't you have to turn that on its head? Like, it's not up for debate that Alphonse was in town on the night of the 23rd and came home at 11. So what was he doing in town until 11? That's what you could say. If he wasn't hunting and herding dogs and planting poison for the dogs, what was he doing? If he went out on the 23rd drinking and then doesn't come home till 11 a.m., shouldn't you flip that around and say, isn't it suspicious that Alphonse is out so early in the morning? Look, it says on the night. Oh, that's Derry. Where's our Alphonse alibi? I mean, there's no debate, is there? No dispute that Alphonse was out on the night of the 23rd and comes back at 11 on the 24th. So he was out all night. Rob says he was courting pretty damsels all night, not hunting dogs. Alphonse always has sweets. All right, let me see Alex's timeline here. Alex. Maybe Alex can tell us also. Alex, do you have a separate subscription to Dear Holmes, or are you just playing along with us? Alex, and has anyone here in the channel played Dear Holmes before? Is this the first case for everyone? Let's see. Alex says, John was happily starting to gather ingredients for breakfast, waiting for Lefebvre to bring back fruits and sweets from town when I left the estate today. Okay, so Lefebvre was to get sweets in town. That might suggest that there are no sweets left. But Lefebvre did not return until past noon to help John finish lunch. Alphonse was heading to his bedroom with peppermints at 11:30. So the question is, that's right, and the chef we know was sent to buy the boy sweets often. So the question is, it seems clear from Alex helping us remember that the chef has not returned with sweets yet. And Alphonse is in the kitchen eating sweets. So either Alphonse bought his own sweets, which would put him right at the scene of the crime for the hammer dog, or he's come home without sweets and the pantry is stocked with sweets even though the chef is buying sweets. That seems a little unlikely to me. Alex seems to be agreeing with my conclusion that I think it suggests that Alphonse went to Witherden's all by himself on the 24th. But Rob counters and says John saw Alphonse in the kitchen at 11:15, likely grabbing the mints. This is a bit of a stretch, but could you say that? Could you add this to Alphonse's motive? Like, think about Alphonse. He's addicted to sweets. He's the Lord's son, and he gets upset when the sweets run out. But he's too scared to go to town to get them. That's why he's always sending the chef or the other helper to go buy him sweets, and he's frustrated. He's like, why can you guys not keep stocked up on these fresh mint humbugs that are made at Witherden's? I want them always available. And he's like angry at himself. Like, I want to be able to go to the inn and drink. I want to be able to go buy sweets, but I'm terrified of these goddamn dogs running all over town by their irresponsible peasant owners that are so irresponsible they can't keep their dogs locked up. And he's like working himself into anger to kill these dogs off. Can we all at least agree? I want to get you guys at least to concede that the hammer hit dog is completely compatible with Alphonse's timeline. Is everyone ready to agree on that? Because that seems clear as day to me. Especially if you're saying that while in Bradley's letter, like 4 hours have gone by that Bradley doesn't even bother to mention. They arrive there at 7 and he's at the police station by noon. Like, time is flying in these letters. Rob does not agree. Rob thinks Alphonse could not have had time to kill the dog. I'm not asking what you think he did. I'm just trying to see if anyone thinks he's doesn't have the opportunity to hit that dog with a hammer. I just don't see how you could possibly rule him out. He's home by 11. That means he's in town at 10:45. The dog is all wrapped up and in the police station by 11:20. That all you have to posit is that the dog was attacked 40 minutes before it arrived in the tarp in the police station. Rob says, I'm setting the bludgeoning at no earlier than 11. I do not see how you can claim that. If you claim the dog was bludgeoned at 11, then you're saying that the passersby heard the commotion, saw it. One of them went and got a cop. The cop came, saw the dog, found a tarp, captured the dog with the tarp, brought the cop in a 20-minute span. That seems very unlikely to me. All right. But at least Rob's on record saying he thinks he's alibied. I mean, you could, from a meta perspective, I could see how you could think the game is trying to alibi him, but no, I don't think he does have an alibi, which is why he's my, if I had to make my theory, that's it. And me agrees with Rob. He's attacked around 11 into the station by half past, which alibis Alphonse. You guys are much more narrow in your timeline thinking than I am. I'm always in general, I'm very suspicious of super tight timelines. I think you gotta like give everyone's sense of time a big grain of salt and make it fuzzy and make everything fuzzy. Like clocks could be off, everything could be off. So for me, Alphonse does not have a timeline alibi. Okay, let's see. Any other theories then? Who else do we want to talk about? So I've made the case for Alphonse. I've given you what I think is his motive, weapon, and timeline catching. So that's Alphonse is checked off. For my money, he's our suspect. But we've got his motive, we've got his means, and we've got his opportunity. Let's talk about our other people. All right, so it looks like we've been focusing on the chef. Let's talk about the chef, Lefebvre. Alex says, if Lefebvre attacked Bundo, wouldn't the other hunting dogs be barking when he went into the dog's enclosure to lift Bundo onto the salver? That's an interesting observation. So when Bundo is found by Peter Bradley, the chef helps them pick up Bundo and brings him in. So the chef has no alibi for time. He's awake when Bundo's killed. Let's just go through opportunity, means, motive. So the chef is the other person who seems to have the opportunity, timeline-wise, to kill everyone. Right? He's in town when the two dogs are killed in town. He's awake in the kitchen when Bundo's attacked. However, he's an early sleeper. He's got a girlfriend and a wife. So my question to you is, when did he kill Derry? Is it your theory that he's gone into town early in the morning to kill Derry? But they think that Derry was killed last night. I think that's where I had a problem with the chef's timeline being implicated. It's the murder of Derry. I find it very hard to believe. The cops are fairly sure that the murder took place in the early hours of the morning. Derry had been drinking in the pub. So if Derry's drinking in the pub and coming home at 4 a.m. or so, it seems very strange that the chef would be there. Although the chef is up at 5 a.m., but not up and out. He has work to do. He has to prep stuff. But we are told the chef hasn't been seen for a couple days dealing with his wife. Let's read this. We meet with Wallace. He says the chef hasn't been here in over a week. The dog's been missing for 2 days. All right, let's see. Though the chat says, I thought he delegated to John. Yeah, the chef hasn't been seen for a while. He's taking care of his wife, who lives on the estate, though. And Song of the Loop points out that the chef was on this expedition where there were 2 deaths. We're not told in the story that the deaths were suspicious. We're just told that you might say we should be looking at these biographies a little bit more. Let's look at our biography of the chef. He's got a colorful background, complex personal life. He's traveled the world, enjoys making it known. He served as a cook on a number of expeditions to the poles, including the disastrous mission of Douglas Mawson. 2 of the members of the party lost their lives. He's got a wife who's been dying of whatever it's called, consumption. He's dating one of the maids who keeps him up late at night. The wife knows about it. She's been dying for a while. But to all appearances, he seems to love his wife, although it's a little bit suspicious that he's been making her special food. He raises a storm if anyone touches the special meals. That made us think, when we read this, we thought, oh, maybe there's some whole poisoning thing going on. But then by the 4th letter, he's letting the assistant make her foods, which are very exotic, so that she could get certain special health, whatever. In town as early as 5 to get an early start on the market. And then we're told he goes to bed early some other night. It feels to me like the chef is an early sleeper and an early riser. That would be a weird way to catch Derry. Think about it. He goes in at 5 a.m. or so. Doesn't it seem more likely that Derry is killed after drinking around midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m.? That's when he came home the previous night from drinking. I don't think there's any indication that Derry stays out till 6 a.m. or so. The only person who stays out all the way overnight is Alphonse. The chef, okay, possible motive would be someone has discovered he's poisoning his wife so he can marry his girlfriend. The chef is the one best opportunity for all the dog, but what would be his motive? Yes, exactly. What would be his motive? First of all, if he was poisoning his wife, I don't see anyone who would stop him from killing her. Like, how could a chef who's familiar with ingredients and stuff be taking so long to poison his wife? And even if he was taking so long to poison her, that's been going on for a long time. And why would you stab dogs and hit dogs? It just doesn't make sense. If you're a poisoner up to some diabolical scheme, you wouldn't be taking these huge risks killing dogs in town. There is no motive. None. Unless you posit that he's psychotic. I suppose one of our theories was that he somehow thinks that the dogs have something magical in them that he's going to feed to his wife to cure her. But let me point out that he doesn't need to cure her. He's got a girlfriend on the side he likes. I don't think he's going to risk his whole life on some magical belief in dog liver that he's not taking the liver. It doesn't make any sense. So he's got opportunity, but no motive. You could say he has means too, because he's walking around with knives and stuff, but he has no motive. I think you got to rule him out for motive. Who's next? We've ruled out Jackie Dowse. He's been captured last night, so he couldn't have killed Derry. Derry is a little bit suspicious in terms of being harsh to dogs, having PTSD. But then, what's your theory of Derry? All right, so let's think about... John says, turns out Chalfont Estate is not really a lord's manor, but a mental hospital. Everyone is sharing a delusion. All right, so let me let me propose something that I don't really believe, but is worth thinking about. So we've been talking about our initial theory that the knife wound to the dog wasn't really a knife wound, but was an animal attack. Do we need to consider the idea that Derry is the animal attacker and that he tried to attack that large Irish wolfhound on the evening, and that his wound is animal attack by the Irish wolfhound? That all the other animal attacks were real human on animal attacks by Derry, but that the wolfhound attacked Derry. Okay, so I think that's no good for two reasons. One, his wounds are not consistent with an animal attack, but also two, his timeline alibi. He's come into town early with us on the morning when the two dogs were attacked. So he's got an alibi for that. So I think Derry is out. You could posit two people involved. A different person killed Derry. Well, I think Alphonse killed Derry, and Alphonse is the dog attacker. But you could posit that Derry was the dog attacker, but no, you can't because we've got his alibi. All right, so Derry is out. Who's next? I feel like we've ruled out the chef. We've ruled out Derry. Although we haven't ruled out the chef based on timeline, just on motive. So that's a sort of softer ruling out. Emmy says there's very few reasons to attack dogs and kill Derry. I think it's completely consistent that Derry was in the wrong place at the wrong time and stumbled on the killer, hurting a dog, trying to kill another dog. That's why you kill Derry, because Derry has caught you. Are we assuming that none of the dog attacks are unrelated or random? There are no bite marks on any of the animals or on Derry, so I don't think it's an animal attack. Are we assuming that none of the dog attacks are unrelated or random? I'm not sure. It's sort of a double negative. It's making me a little confused by what you're asking. Let us consider... Okay, so we've considered the vet, and we've ruled out the vet based on not being able to get onto the estate. Who's left for us? Where's our biographies? It seems like fair play would suggest that it has to be someone mentioned in the biographies, but I'm not sure. Okay, shall we talk about... All right, we've got the butler and Adalji, but they're just not talked about at all for most of the case. And they seem to have timeline alibis. So I think they're out. What about Mr. Lewington, the zookeeper? What's our theory for him? We know he's a gambler. So he could owe money. He's claimed to us... He's comfortable with animals, though. He likes animals. We think, our guy, Peter Bradley, thinks he's got a timeline alibi. He says, I'm pretty sure he's in his bedroom. I could hear him snoring. And he remained on the estate, except for a brief stroll of 20 minutes. Okay, look at this. This is not a, I think this is a fairly confident statement. He was on the estate except for a 20-minute walk at 8. We know it takes 15 minutes to get to town. You could not have gone to town and kill him. I think that's Lewington now has timeline alibi. John League is in town. He has an alibi. So what's left? Who is left? Feels to me it's got to be Alphonse. Rob says the 20-minute walk is self-reported. It's kind of unclear here. He says as a matter of statement of fact that he remained on the night of the 23rd and the morning after, but then he gives us what looks like a statement by Lewington, a brief night stroll. So that's confusing. Does he mean to be saying it's only Lewington's word we have that he was on the estate? I don't know. But then he gives him an alibi of his own. And he has no motive. Zero. There's no sign that he's crazy. There's no sign that he doesn't like animals. There's no benefit for him. I think I'm talking myself into Alphonse. Maybe Perky was in the chef's room because Bertram wasn't home that night. There is the weird thing about them looking for Perky, him being in the chef's room. The chef likes Perky, though, right? Aren't we told that the chef... No, it's Adology that gives Perky some food. Emmy says, I'd be disappointed in Alphonse. The letters basically tell us the animal texts were by someone who didn't like animals. It's too simple. The only doubt I'm having is the split idea. The only thing that I'm having, that I'm still... I don't think this... I don't like the chef for motive, but I'm trying to think if Derry is the killer... Oh no, Derry's ruled out time on. I keep forgetting that for the two dogs. Feels to me like it's Alphonse to me. Nicholas says, when we're talking about Alphonse, the game asks for proof, which we don't have. I don't know. I think I might read that differently. Peter Bradley does say to us, like, if I'm going to accuse Alphonse, I better really know and not just be a rumor. What does he say? He says... It's a brutish theory. Don't treat this information with utmost discretion. His lordship is just and highly protective, Mr. Alphonse. Proof in hand, he would be pleased to oust any villain, even a son. But without proof, my choice of questions will be seen as a gross attack on his beloved child. I think if I had to guess, the way this is going to wrap up is Sherlock Holmes is going to go into Alphonse's room and find that poker. But now, addressing something that everyone has been very fixated on, do we have a theory of the bear cage replacement lock filings? Do we need to look at that again? That's the one that feels like it could be a clue. Let's see. So we go to the blacksmith to build a padlock for the dog enclosure. He says, Mr. Willington was here last week. He had me make a new bolt for one of his cages. Talking about a break-in. When we go back to Willington, he blushed, confirmed what Mr. Joy had said. He says, look, nobody broke in. I don't want to upset Lord Chalfont by making a fuss about nothing. However, I did need a new lock. I needed a new lock. He made him make a new bolt. He made me make a new bolt. Then Willington says, I needed a new lock. Grizzly's trying to eat away at it. When I went to bring him his food last Tuesday, I noticed metal filings on the ground. We say, you don't think someone was trying to file through the bolt? To steal a bear? No. Anyway, I've got a new padlock now. He showed a massive piece of metal, and Mr. Joy has fashioned a sturdy bolt, 3-inch diameter. He shows us. He shows it to us, so he's not lying. He shows us the new lock and a new sturdier bolt, 3-inch in diameter. That's crazy. Enough for Grizzly's chewing habit, I think. And then we say, I'm less inclined to trust Mr. Willington's theory and grow more worried that the animals are in danger. You could imagine he might be lying to, like, if the lock was lost or broken or fell off, he might try to cover it up and say, oh, I was just getting a new one in case. But then you'd have to come up with a theory for why someone would take the locks. We don't really have a good one. So I guess bottom line is my theory is this is just all true and it's just a coincidence. I know no one likes that. No one likes that idea. I guess my backup theory is someone was sharpening that poker knife metal at this location. That just seems a little weird, but that's the best I got. Could also be bear cage lock, just a red herring, no relevance to the case. That would suck. That's my best guess, though. Song of the Wood says, bear cage is weird because it's super dangerous. Let's say you manage to break the lock on the cage with a poker. Chance of the bear attacking you is high. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's hard to see anyone who would try to open the bear cage. This is kind of... This is a little bit silly, but... Jonathan says, is Willington the person who mentions the missing poker? No, I think that's the butler staff. I believe it's the staff of the kitchen, including the butler. Let's see. The boy comes in. Okay. John the apprentice was handling everything. The butler, Mr. Summers, that is, and one of the kitchen maids, Miss Ruby, were in a conversation about a loss in poker. So it's the butler and Miss Ruby. So Rob says, I think we should focus on the metal filings, not where they were found. What could be the cause of the filings? Well, certainly one reasonable thing, I think, is the sharpening of the poker. That would generate metal filings. If the murder weapon is a fireplace poker that's been sharpened to a very sharp tip, and that could be that. I had another theory that seems a little silly, but it's a sort of a red herring theory, but an explanation. We know Lewington is often touching people for money because he gambles away his money. Could he just be like, okay, here's how I'm going to make some money. I go into town, I sell the old lock, I go to the blacksmith, I have him make a new lock and a new bolt, put it on the Chalfont tab. So it's his way of sort of getting equipment and pawning it off. Doesn't seem that efficient, but you could see if he's putting all his expenses on the tab of Lord Chalfont, he could be selling equipment regularly, selling various things, and just inventing an excuse of the metal filings. All right. We might be almost ready to stop here. Let me look through some of the comments on YouTube. Emily posted a rather long comment here. Let's see. Some theories. I think we've touched on many of these. Let's see, can I scroll? Why is it not? There we go. Okay. Emily says, apparently Alphonse has commendations from the war. However, the writer mentions that this is surprising. No one knows what he did. Chalfont just lets it go. Moreover, Alphonse, 31-year-old guy, lives with his dad. Poor impulse control, eats lots of sweets, terrified of animals, never talked about the war. Little incongruous with the idea of a war hero. Either Alphonse is some secret spy with a mission or there's something fishy here. And then she points out Derry also served in the war. Clearly has some bitterness and demons about it. Worked with dogs, has no problem treating them harshly. This was a theory that some people have bandied about a little bit at a previous stream about Alphonse and Derry knowing each other. It's an interesting idea, though it feels like Derry would have told us about it or something. Alphonse is terrible, and Annie exhibited suspicious behavior. I think Derry's responsible for alerting the dogs, filings on the bear cage, and at least the first crime against the dogs. I think he was trying to scare Alphonse for revenge and possibly implicate him. So this is the double implication thing. Probably hoped the bear cage guy would tell everyone and Alphonse would hear. He may have hoped. That was my other backup theory of Alphonse. John says, I have to head out. Good luck, everyone. I'll see you at tonight's stream. Yeah, I better sign off soon to get a little bit of sleep. But my other theory was that maybe Alphonse is so terrified about these animals that he sprinkled those metal shavings to make it, he wanted the upgrade. Is that like, imagine that you're Alphonse, you're so terrified of the animals getting out, you don't want to, maybe you don't want to admit it. So you're like, that bear lock doesn't look strong enough to hold the bear. How do I get them to upgrade it. Maybe I'll just make it look like someone was trying to break in. Seems odd. Alex says, we have no information on Mr. Bertram, the valet. It just feels like when we don't have any information on anyone, no alibi, no motive, it seems crazy to have to pick them. That's the guy who owns Perky. It is weird that... But we do have a bit of an alibi, right? Because we're told he was up until the morning playing with Lord Chalfont till like 4 a.m. the morning when the other animals were attacked. He would have had to get no sleep. It's a little bit weird. Let me go back to this for a bit. To make something else for a real dog. Large amount of gray hair is definitely suspicious. Tried to terrify Alphonse with it. Alphonse killed Derry to hide his secret. There's a lot of evidence that Lefebvre is poisoning people, both his wife who has consumption and maybe the others who are coughing. Yeah, other people are definitely coughing. I'm not sure if this is intentional. Arsenic can cause respiratory issues. Only wants to poison his wife. His wife isn't dead and he's functionally acting like she is. And if she died suddenly, it wouldn't be suspicious since everyone already knows she's dying. That's right. This is my point about how it's way too convoluted for him killing his wife. He'll just kill her whenever he wants. No one would think twice about it. We should leave open the possibility that the dog just got poisoned by chance. It seems likely. If the poisoning is intentional, target would be Lord Chalfont. Practicing on dogs. That was an early theory, but it just seems so unlikely. Dr. Allison is not as innocent as he seems. He's too mixed up and throws out too many theories and potential red herrings to be completely uninvolved. So far, he's introduced the idea of a knife, possibly an escaped convict, massive German wolfhound, Irish wolfhound. I think he was the only one who positively identified the dog as a wolfhound. It's almost as if he's trying to intentionally mislead, but his fancifulness might be just playful reference. So... let's see. Rob says, nice overview with some new angles. I particularly like the idea that Derry might have been trying to terrorize Alphonse with the dog attacks. Hound disguise. You guys think that Irish wolfhound was a disguise? Oops, didn't mean to do that. That seems crazy. 3 people saw the wolfhound. Okay, Rob has some theories about the butcher boil. We went into them. But he's arrested the night before, so he couldn't have killed Derry. Rob's final theory update. A ton of things pointing to the chef. Animal attack. Still hung up on the bear cage metal filings. They need to be explained. Let's see. It escaped. My theory goes like this. What if something escaped from the zoo? Maybe only Lewington knows about the escape. Lewington has been trying to capture or kill the animal to avoid a scandal. He bought a lock and a bolt for a trap of the transport cage. His statement about metal filings was a lie to cover up the real reason. So the explanations are: the first dog was injured by the escaped animal. The poisoned dog was accidentally poisoned by a trap set by Lewington. The bludgeoned dog was either attacked by the animal or hit by Lewington to silence it. Finally, Derry was mauled by the escaped animal when he happened to run into it on his way home from the inn. The weak links in the theory is that none of the injuries sustained by the animals and human are described as being caused by animals. They're vague enough to possibly be either. It's Small knife could just as well have been caused. Derry's wound was described as causing any man a swift death. I mean, you make as good a case as I think can be made for the animal attack theory, which I really liked originally. I just don't see it. In fact, you might even say that Derry's injuries are doubly implausible as an animal attack. Like, he's got a stab wound in his stomach that's like from a sharp claw, you could claim, but then he's got bruises on his face and shoulder. So, like, what animal can incise like a knife but also beat you about the face and shoulder? Is this a some modus operandi of the cassowary that we don't know about? And then here's someone suggesting that it's Peter Bradley, the writer, to us, trying to frame someone. If he's trying to frame someone, he's doing a terrible job. It just seems implausible. And if all of the letters are untrustworthy, then everything's out the window. Nicola is saying, here are some clues to explain. What did the bruises on Derry's body mean? Several on his face. This is great by Nicola. This is the kind of thing that I think is useful to do in these cases, explaining these weird things. Okay, so my theory for here is it means he got into a fight because he was trying to stop Alphonse or whoever from killing the dog. That's how I think he got his injuries. And I think the shoulder wound is being hit with the poker. The only thing is you could see hitting someone behind with the poker to do that. But I guess both things. Okay. What does the dog hair on the crime scene mean? I think it's leading us to believe that that's what was happening in the alley. The dog was being attacked at the time. What happened with the bear cage's lock? This has to be important and happened 1 week before the first letter. This is the one that I'm the most hung up on. What does Alphonse do at night? Why was he out the whole night and early morning of the 24th, returning to the state only at 11 a.m.? I don't think this can be explained with the Pheasant Inn staying open all the time, since it's not supposed to. Even when it does the illegal special hours, it would eventually have to close. Yeah, so what is he doing? Maybe he's going out hunting dogs. Roaming around town looking for the dogs. Why was Mr. Derry up at 5 a.m. on the 20th, even if his shift only started at lunchtime? This was suspicious to me. A possible explanation is that he'd been out all night at the Pheasant Inn and just returned, put on his pajamas, and went to take a quick snack before going to sleep. That's a pretty good idea. That's pretty convincing. So he could have been up and killing Bundo on his way back. But he seems to have a real strong alibi for the night of the two-dog attack. How did Perky end up in the chef's room on the morning of the 29th? The dog sleeps in Mr. Bertram's room, so how did it get out unnoticed? Where was Mr. Bertram when it happened, and how did he enter the chef's room? These are all great questions. Why does Peter not mention at all Mr. Bertram in the third letter? He makes a list of every other relevant character in the estate, but says nothing about him. That is weird. At what time did Violet go to the vet to report the poisoned dog? If it was late, why was she not at school? If it was early, did people really take 4 hours to deal with the dog? These are all great points we've talked about, but not resolved. Why did Mr. Allen say that Mr. Wallace lives alone at his forge, but he says me and my wife enjoy the cooking? That seems to me like an oversight by the writers. Mr. Blueberry was missing for 2 days. Where was it? That's a great question. A great question. One of our early theories that I've completely forgotten about is that there's some kind of animal-dog fighting going on. at the inn. And that's where these dogs are getting injured and stuff. But I guess it doesn't really make sense. What was the smell of hot metal in the early morning of the 29th? Was someone messing with the murder weapon? Whoa, that's an interesting idea. That's a very interesting idea if we think it's the poker. I mean, we're told that the forge guy is up late. But Nico is raising the possibility that someone could be getting rid of the murder weapon. I want to see that. He says, I rose at 5 o'clock. I remember being able to smell hot metal from the smithies, which suggested Mr. Droy was up early as well. Normally he waits until the horses are brought to him. I encountered Mr. Bertram. He was looking for his terrier and asked if I had seen it. One of the maids did find it, hiding in the chef's room. So, Nicola was wondering if could the forge guy be melting down the poker weapon? That was an interesting idea. Surely the guy who runs the forge, though, wouldn't need to steal a poker if that's our theory. Remember, the poker thing is not a settled thing. So, and we should remember here's the suggestion. Originally, we thought the chef was poisoning her, but then we thought, could the chef be trying to get dog liver to keep her alive, save her? Because he was on that expedition where the dog livers may have been cannibalized and saved people, saved him. Seems unlikely, though. Okay, just finishing up here. Mr. Summers talking about loss of a poker ladder seems most likely. Why were they so animated talking about it? And why did they stop when they saw Peter? I think that's just because they're talking about something's gone missing and they don't want to. Like if you're a servant and you say something's been pilfered, you're going to bring suspicion on all the servants. You probably want to handle it internally if it's just someone misplaced it before getting someone in trouble. What were they doing in the kitchen? Were they really making bonbons? Yeah, I think they were. Okay, let's see. An issue I like there is the dog attacked. Well, let me check with the chat here. See if there's anything else. Let's see. Let's see. Maybe someone was fashioning attack to attack Derry. Why would you attack Derry? Testing sharpness on the dogs is plausible. Ugh, it really seems not so plausible to me. But then you have to guess that the poison dog is completely unrelated or someone's practicing to kill Derry. For what reason? So that's the theory about Derry being a planned attack. Everything else is practice. Blueberry says, Mr. Wallace's dog was not well for months. Poor diet slowly killing my dog. Was it also poisoned? Well, it's an interesting observation that Alex made because the forge guy tells us that he doesn't like the vet's attitude, that the vet is saying you're slowly killing your dog, and the Iron Forge guy just says, I've been giving him cheese for years, he loves it, he's fine. So I don't see how we could, like, the forge guy is a little bit suspicious, but the dog looks fine. That would be a normal disagreement. Like, that's completely believable that the vet's like, you can't feed your dog cheese, it'll make him sick. And the vet's like, stop being so ridiculous. The dog loves the cheese. I've been feeding it to him for years. He's fine. Like, the vet is overly paranoid about diet, and the forge guy is just normal person who knows that it's no big deal. All right, let's see. So Ginny is saying here, initially I like Derry for his PTSD, but then the timeline makes it less likely. Now leaning towards Alphonse, he's afraid, tampered with the lock, trusting that Willington would conclude. This is what we've talked about before. Maybe he tampered with the lock to hope that the lock would get an upgrade, stab Bundo through the bars, to help them put... This may have been... I think it was Ginny's comment. Ginny is the person who made the comments about the Alphonse flipping his motive on its head. And this is what I really liked. So it was Ginny that first turned Alphonse's fear of animals into an explanation for the behavior. So this was what I read from Ginny that got me hyped up more on Alphonse. This idea that he's trying to get everyone to take the animals' locks more seriously, that he attacked Bundo hoping someone would try to lock up the dogs. And then, while having additional locks on the animal enclosures may have alleviated his anxiety about the animals on the estate getting out, he was still bothered by the dogs in town. He had encountered them on multiple occasions as he came and went from the Pheasant Inn. Dogs running loose, unaccompanied by their owners, terrorizing him, whatever. Having seen Tugger in town on previous days, he came prepared and poisoned him. When he encountered Blueberry later that same morning, he didn't have any more poison, so he bludgeoned him. Some may argue Alphonse didn't have time. That may be correct. I don't agree with it. So this is Ginny's doubling down on Alphonse, which I liked. Finally, on the early morning of 29th, Derry witnesses Alphonse outside of the Pheasant assaulting the wolfhound. Derry confronts him and is stabbed and killed. I don't love this theory. It's very simple, not that interesting, and likely wrong. Fear can be a powerful motivator, but I'm not sure it works here. So that was the idea that really made me lock in on Alphonse. Now she's talking about the chef, his motive for killing dogs. I don't think he's planning on killing his wife with dog liver. Dogs survived. They weren't mauled. Yep. Okay. So... And I think we'll leave the other replies on that thread as something that are either old or being discussed here. I love the idea of doubling down Alphonse's fear into making it a motivator. But let's see. The dog hiding in the chef's room might have picked up a scent if the chef killed Derry. He'd have murder weapon, bloody clothes to hide. Yeah. One of the issues here is we don't know how this game works, so we don't know how many red herrings to expect. Like, you could say, hey, the dog where it is a red herring. The bear filings is complete red herring. Like, so many things could be just red herrings meant to throw us off, and we're going to learn a little bit when we get our solution about that. But... I've got my vote for Alphonse and Derry stumbling into Alphonse. But we don't need to vote. We got another week to think about it. All right, so let's wrap it up here. Anything else anyone wants to talk about that we haven't gone over? We've been doing this for 2 hours. Feels like we've really gone through this. I'm not super confident, but I think I've got my vote. I suppose once you think you got your guy, you could try to say, okay, you should go through it all and look for any contraindicatory items. So if I think it's Alphonse, You could look for things. There is a weird background with Alphonse, so that looks like it could be red herring. Can I just point one more thing out before we go away regarding this theory of Alphonse? He actually specifically talks about fearing the bear may get out. Look, the boy's afraid of animals. He's barely willing to walk by the gardens because he thinks grizzly or bear might get out. And we've even noted here, is this his motive for tampering with the bear's, grizzly's cage? Like, he's afraid they may get out. All right. Chat says, this has been a great discussion. It will be very interesting to see the solution and talk about it. I'm on record with my best solution. Emmy is sticking with the chef. Everyone will get a chance before we read the solution to offer up their theory. If you're not going to be with us live next week when we play through it, please do put your final theories on this video thread or join me next week. I am really looking forward to it. And I think we'll have a long talk after we read the solution about how satisfied we are with the solution and why. So I think we'll have an interesting conversation once we read the solution. Okay, well, I'll see some of you who have been watching the last 2 nights for the finale of Be the Detective. Otherwise, next Sunday, when we play Dear Holmes again. And if you have something you'd like to see played between now and next week, post it on the Board Game Guild section. Please do consider giving this a thumbs up, a like on YouTube, and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I'll see you all next time.